The alien armada floated silently above Earth, an imposing fleet of sleek, metallic ships glistening against the backdrop of space. To the alien species known as the Varnak, this mission was routine, just another conquest in a long string of planetary takeovers. Their leader, Commander Zol Thar, stood tall on the bridge of the command vessel, surveying the planet below with a calm but dismissive gaze. Earth, a world the Varnak had categorized as primitive, weak, and largely unremarkable, was next on their list of conquests. From their observations, humans appeared technologically inferior and deeply reliant on outdated tools to navigate their world. There was no challenge here, Zolthar thought, just another easy victory. The Varnak had studied Earth from a distance for several months, collecting vast amounts of data from intercepted human transmissions. Television shows, news broadcasts, and even online interactions were sifted through, analyzed and dissected by the alien analysts. Their conclusions were unanimous: humans, while intelligent in a limited way, were emotionally driven and physically fragile. They appeared to rely heavily on technology for basic survival, lacking the innate strength and endurance that the Varnak prized. These humans, Zolthar mused, were nothing more than overgrown children, squabbling over trivial matters on a planet that had somehow given them a chance at survival. From the alien perspective, Earth was an anomaly. It was classified as a Category 3 planet, meaning that while it had life-supporting conditions, it was also filled with dangerous environmental hazards, including violent weather, unpredictable tectonic activity, and a range of aggressive animal species. Most worlds like Earth were barren wastelands, wiped clean by the very forces that had shaped them. But Earth, for some reason, thrived despite its chaotic nature. Still, to the Varnak, this didn't equate to any real threat. After all, their technology far surpassed anything humans could muster. The invasion plan was simple: descend, deploy shock troops, and bring Earth's governments to their knees within a matter of hours. Zolthar's lips curled into what could only be described as an alien smirk. There was no honor in this fight, no real challenge. It would be like swatting away an insect. The humans would offer little resistance, and the resources of their planet would soon be added to the vast Varnak Empire. He turned to his second-in-command, a lieutenant named Ryle Kath, who had been monitoring their progress. "Status report," Zolthar commanded. "Everything is proceeding as planned," Commander Ryle Kath responded, his voice steady. "Our scouts have confirmed that the human defenses are laughable. Their reliance on what they call military technology is laughable. Outdated weapons, slow response systems, and no understanding of intergalactic warfare. We'll take control before they even understand what's happening." Zolthar nodded in satisfaction. "Good. Prepare the invasion forces. We make landfall within the hour." As the alien officers moved swiftly to carry out the orders, Zolthar's gaze remained fixed on the blue and green planet below. From their distant vantage point, Earth looked peaceful, almost serene. How deceiving, he thought. These humans had no idea that their world was about to change forever. They would become just another footnote in the Varnak's long history of conquest. The Varnak had learned long ago that most species were easy to subjugate once their spirits were broken. Conquer their leaders, destroy their infrastructures, and the rest would fall in line. Humans, Zolthar assumed, would be no different. They might put up a token fight, perhaps even display some resistance in isolated pockets, but ultimately their inferiority would lead to their downfall. The Varnak had never encountered a species that could survive on a planet classified as a Deathworld. Earth was not officially designated as one. Such planets were rare, deadly, and often avoided, but there were elements of Earth's environment that made the Varnak pause. Harsh climates, dangerous predators, and a fragile balance between life and destruction marked its history. Still, Zolthar dismissed these concerns. The humans had survived so long by sheer luck, he believed. They hadn't thrived because they were strong, but because they had never truly faced an adversary like the Varnak. As the final preparations for the invasion commenced, Zolthar found himself momentarily reflecting on the human condition. It was curious how such a seemingly fragile species had managed to build cities, develop technology, and form civilizations on a planet so unstable. It was a testament to their resilience, but it was also, he thought, a sign of their arrogance. They believed themselves to be masters of their world when, in reality, they were at the mercy of forces far beyond their control. The Varnak had come to correct that delusion. Deep in the rugged wilderness, a lone human trekked through the dense forest. The air was cool, crisp, and filled with the earthy scent of pine and moss. Tall trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows as the sun began its slow descent. This was no place for the faint of heart. It was wild, untamed, and unforgiving. But for people like John, it was home. He thrived in these conditions, relishing the challenge that nature presented. Clad in weather-worn gear and carrying a simple pack, John moved with purpose, his senses attuned to every sound, every shift in the wind. He was a survivalist, someone who lived not by the conveniences of modern life but by his own skill and wits. John had been out here for days hunting, tracking, and navigating through some of the most dangerous terrain known to man. He was no stranger to the perils of the wild predators. Harsh weather and unforgiving landscapes were part of the job. To him, this was a test, a way to push himself to the limits. Unbeknownst to him, far above the planet's surface, his every movement was being watched. The Varnak had set up surveillance to study human life in real time, expecting to see a species that relied on its primitive tools to survive. What they saw was John, a human who moved with ease through a landscape that would terrify most of their species. He had no advanced technology, no protective suits or weapons of mass destruction. To the Varnak, it was strange. To John, it was just another day. As he made his way deeper into the forest, John suddenly froze, his sharp instincts kicking in. He could feel the presence of something watching him, something large. Slowly, he turned his head, his eyes scanning the thick underbrush. And then he saw it. About 30 yards away, partially hidden by the trees, was a massive grizzly bear. Its dark fur rippled with power as it moved, and its eyes were locked onto John, sizing him up. John's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't panic. He had encountered bears before. Most of the time they would move on if given space, but this one was different. There was a hunger in its gaze, a kind of primal challenge that John recognized immediately. This bear wasn't going to back down. The Varnak, observing from their command center, immediately took notice of the bear. To them, it was a monstrous predator, the kind they had only encountered on Deathworlds, planets so hostile that even their species avoided them. They watched in fascination, expecting the human to flee in terror or be torn apart. After all, what could a fragile being like a human possibly do against such a beast? John slowly reached for his knife, a simple but reliable tool that had seen him through countless close encounters. He knew that running was out of the question. The bear would be on him in seconds if he tried. Instead, he stood his ground, his muscles tense but controlled, his breathing steady. He had one chance, and he would need to be fast, precise, and ruthless. The bear charged. In an instant, the peaceful forest exploded into chaos. The massive animal barreled forward with a terrifying roar, and John braced himself. As the bear came within striking distance, John sidestepped with lightning speed, slashing at its side with his knife. The blade cut through the thick fur and skin, but it barely slowed the beast. The bear reared up, towering over John, swiping with a powerful paw. John ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as the massive claws passed inches from his head. The Varnak watched in stunned silence. This was not what they had expected. The human wasn't fleeing, wasn't begging for mercy. He was fighting back, and he was doing so with a level of ferocity and skill that defied their understanding. John knew he couldn't afford to let the fight drag on. The bear was too strong, too relentless. He needed to end it quickly. As the bear came at him again, he lunged forward, driving his knife into the creature's neck. The bear roared in pain, swiping wildly as it staggered backward. John stayed on the offensive, refusing to give the beast any room to recover. With one final brutal strike, he drove the knife deep into the bear's throat, severing a vital artery. The bear collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. John stood over it, breathing hard, his clothes soaked with sweat and blood. His hands trembled from the adrenaline, but his mind was sharp. He had won. Entree. The Varnak officers exchanged uneasy glances. What they had just witnessed was unlike anything they had ever seen. A human, with no advanced weaponry, had just taken down one of the most fearsome predators on Earth. It wasn't just the strength that impressed them, it was the calculated precision, the unwavering resolve, and the sheer willpower that John had shown. To them, this was beyond comprehension. Back in the forest, John knelt beside the fallen bear, silently offering his respect to the creature. He had fought for survival, as had the bear. It was the way of the wild, a truth as old as time. He cleaned his knife on the grass, took a deep breath, and began the process of skinning the animal, making use of every part of the beast that had challenged him. High above, the Varnak leaders were now deeply troubled. They had grossly underestimated the humans. If one of them could survive such an encounter, what else were they capable of? In the command center of the Varnak flagship, a tense silence hung in the air. The alien officers, who had once been so confident in their impending conquest, were now staring in disbelief at the footage of the human fighting the bear. The cold efficiency with which John had dispatched the massive predator unsettled them, but it was more than just the physical fight that shook their confidence. It was the human's resilience, his refusal to retreat in the face of certain death, that began to gnaw at the alien leader's certainty. Commander Zolthar, who had been so sure of Earth's inferiority just moments ago, now found himself pacing, his mind racing as he replayed the scene. How could such a fragile-looking creature, with no advanced weaponry or armor, defeat a beast of such size and strength? The Varnak had conquered many worlds, but they had never encountered a species that fought with such raw determination. Humans, it seemed, were far more dangerous than they had anticipated. Commander Ralkath spoke, breaking the uneasy silence. This. Human, he survived a direct encounter with one of the planet's apex predators. We did not anticipate this level of physical toughness. Perhaps we need to reassess our invasion strategy. Zolthar stopped pacing and turned toward his second-in-command, his expression one of growing concern. You're suggesting that one human's survival changes our plans? We are still far superior to them in technology, in numbers, and in military strategy. What could one isolated incident possibly? Respectfully, Commander. Ralkath interrupted. This was not an isolated incident. Our scientists have been re-examining the data on Earth's ecosystem and its inhabitants. This planet, though not officially classified as a death world, bears many of the characteristics of one. The creatures that thrive here, humans included, are shaped by an environment that fosters aggression, adaptability, and endurance. It would be unwise to ignore the implications of what we've witnessed. A ripple of agreement spread through the command center as several officers nodded in silent accord. The term Death World was not used lightly in the Varnak's vast records. Planets given that designation were so hostile to life that only the most robust, relentless species could survive, let alone dominate. The Varnak had encountered a few in their conquests, and the cost of subduing such worlds had always been high. Continue, Zolthar said, his voice lower now, tinged with uncertainty. Ralkath gestured toward a holographic display of Earth. The data we've collected shows that Earth's environment is highly volatile. Its weather patterns are extreme, with hurricanes, earthquakes, and violent storms regularly reshaping the landscape. Its fauna is aggressive, with many species displaying remarkable predatory instincts. And the humans, though technologically behind us, have evolved to survive in these conditions. They have thrived not because of their technology, but despite it. Their bodies, their instincts, they are products of this world's brutality. Zolthar frowned, his mind struggling to reconcile what he was hearing. You believe these humans are? Deathworlders, it is a possibility we cannot ignore, Ralkath replied, his voice steady. Their physical capabilities, coupled with their psychological resilience, make them far more dangerous than we initially thought. The human we just observed did not panic, did not flee. He fought with precision and skill, using his environment and his own ingenuity to overcome an overwhelming threat. Zolthar's frown deepened as he considered the implications. The Varnak had always relied on their technological superiority to conquer worlds, but if humans possessed the kind of natural strength and determination seen in true Deathworlders, their invasion might not be as easy as they had assumed. Even if they are Deathworlders, Zolthar countered, we still have the advantage. Our weapons, our ships, they are leagues beyond what these humans can comprehend. That may be true, Commander. Another officer spoke up, but if they possess the will to fight us, the kind of tenacity we've just seen, our casualties could be far higher than anticipated. We've never faced an enemy like this before, a species that fights not just with weapons, but with their very bodies, their instincts. The room fell silent again as the gravity of the situation sank in. Zolthar could feel the weight of their unspoken fears pressing down on him. They had expected a simple invasion, a quick victory over a primitive species. Now they were beginning to understand that they had gravely underestimated the humans. "What do you propose we do?" Zolthar asked, his voice measured but tense. Raukath stepped forward, his expression calm but resolute. "We must reassess our strategy. We need more information on human combat capabilities, both individual and collective. If we are to invade, we must be prepared for the possibility that humans will not simply roll over and accept defeat. They may fight us tooth and nail, and we must understand the full extent of their resilience before we commit our forces." Zolthar clenched his jaw. The idea of delaying the invasion rankled him. He had come here expecting an easy conquest, a planet that would fall in hours. Now his subordinates were suggesting caution, even fear of these so-called Deathworlders. "Very well," he said after a long pause. "Gather more data. Study their military, their governments, their infrastructure. I want to know every possible weakness we can exploit." Raukath nodded. "It will be done, Commander. But I must advise caution. We are dealing with a species that has survived on a world far more hostile than we initially understood. They may be more formidable than any enemy we faced before." As the meeting concluded, Zolthar returned to his private quarters, his mind swirling with thoughts of the human who had fought the bear. He had never imagined that such a fragile-looking species could possess such strength. Perhaps, he mused darkly, Earth was more than just a primitive world. Perhaps it was a death world in disguise, and its inhabitants were far more dangerous than he had ever anticipated. In the heart of the Varnak command ship, the atmosphere had shifted from confidence to unease. The alien leaders, once assured of their superiority, now found themselves embroiled in a heated debate. The images of the human fighting the bear had circulated among the officers, and whispers of Earth being more dangerous than previously thought had spread like wildfire. Now they faced a difficult decision: proceed with the invasion as planned or reconsider their approach in light of this new information. Commander Zolthar stood at the head of the room, his stern expression betraying the internal conflict he felt. He had led dozens of successful conquests, yet never before had he encountered a situation like this. The term Deathworlder lingered in his mind, a concept that carried weight and fear among the Varnak. Could it be possible that these humans, seemingly primitive and unworthy of attention, were a true threat to the Varnak Empire? "We cannot let one human's fight dictate our course of action," one of the senior officers argued, his voice rising with frustration. "Yes, he survived the encounter, but that is one individual. Our forces are more than capable of overwhelming their defenses. This does not change the fact that they are technologically inferior." Raukath, who had been instrumental in the reassessment of the humans, shook his head. "It is not just one fight. This is indicative of a deeper resilience within the species. The human did not fight with advanced technology. He fought with his hands, his instincts, and his environment. They are far tougher than we realized, and if we ignore that, we will pay the price." Zolthar looked between his officers, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. There was truth in both arguments. The Varnak did possess overwhelming technological superiority, but the human's ability to adapt and survive under extreme conditions had shaken his confidence in a swift and easy victory. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that this was not just about one human and one fight. It was about what that fight represented: the indomitable spirit of a species forged in the harshest of environments. If we proceed with the invasion as planned, Relkath continued, we may find ourselves in a prolonged conflict. Every indication points to the humans being willing to fight for their survival, and they will not make it easy for us. We must consider the possibility that what we've seen is only a glimpse of their true potential. Another officer, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. Commander, we have faced strong species before. We have always emerged victorious because of our superior technology and tactics. But if we invade Earth, we may be walking into a war we are not fully prepared for. The humans may not be able to match us technologically, but they may outlast us. Bleed us dry in a conflict that could stretch on for years. Zolthar's eyes narrowed. The idea of a drawn-out war was not appealing. The Varnak Empire prided itself on quick, decisive victories, not prolonged battles that drained resources and morale. And yet the possibility that Earth's inhabitants could resist in ways the Varnak had not foreseen loomed large. Then what do you propose? Zolthar asked, his tone edged with frustration. We cannot turn back. We are here, and the humans remain oblivious to our presence. If we withdraw now, it will be seen as weakness. Relkath met Zolthar's gaze with calm determination. I suggest we delay the invasion. We continue to gather intelligence, study their species, and develop strategies that account for their resilience. If we rush into this, we risk underestimating them again, and that could be catastrophic. A calculated approach, one that allows us to exploit their weaknesses fully, will ensure a more successful conquest if we choose to proceed at all. Silence fell over the room as the officers mulled over Relkath's words. The notion of delaying the invasion gnawed at Zolthar's pride. The Varnak had never backed down from a fight, and the idea of stalling seemed cowardly. But at the same time, the risk of underestimating the humans' Deathworlders, as they were now beginning to be called, was too great to ignore. Finally, Zolthar spoke, his voice firm but tempered with caution. We will delay. Continue gathering intelligence. I want every possible scenario explored, every potential weakness identified. We will not move until we are certain of our victory. There was a collective exhale in the room as the tension eased. Some officers looked relieved, others frustrated, but all understood the gravity of the decision. The invasion would not proceed today, but that did not mean Earth was safe. The Varnak would continue to watch, to study, and to plan. Humanity would not escape their gaze. As the meeting adjourned, Zolthar remained behind, staring at the planet below. From this distance, Earth looked so small, so fragile. But he knew now that appearances could be deceiving. The humans were not like the other species the Varnak had conquered. They were something else entirely. They were survivors, fighters, Deathworlders. And if the Varnak were to succeed, they would need to be prepared for a battle unlike any they had fought before. Back on Earth, John packed up his camp, unaware that his actions had just changed the course of history. The bear's pelt was slung over his shoulder as he made his way through the forest, his thoughts focused on survival, on the next challenge that the wild would throw at him. He had no idea that far above, alien eyes were watching his every move. That they had seen him as more than just a human, they had seen him as a symbol of what Earth truly was, a death world. As the Varnak fleet slowly repositioned itself, pulling back into a safer orbit, Zolthar's gaze never left the planet. Earth would be conquered, he thought, but it would not be today. And when the time came, the Varnak would be ready.